Guys, today I'm going to be ranking uni degrees based on how worth it I think they are and whether they're going to get you an ROI or not. So yeah, this is my first YouTube video, so if you're here, I really appreciate you clicking on this video. Hopefully it's the first of many to come. To be honest, I think I have a pretty interesting perspective on this topic, which is why I wanted to make this video because uh, I actually did go to uni straight out of high school, but I dropped out after 3 days. And then after that, I spent quite a lot of time, 3 gap years actually, where I did all sorts of things. I worked full time, I tried to make a business, I tried YouTube, and at one point I was literally sleeping on the train. And bit of an update now, I'm back at uni, I'm in med school, and I run a tutoring business, and I'm getting married in just over 12 months. So a lot of changes have happened, and I've met a lot of different people, and I know I've got a lot of growth to do, but I hope that this video can be helpful for someone that's thinking through what uni degree they might want to pursue and whether it's actually worth it, particularly in this day and age where things are so hard to, things are so uncertain, right? So before we get into it, I just want to make it clear that this ranking is not about how smart you are or how valuable you are, how prestigious or cool the degree is. And I'm Asian. This tier list is also not about how much you can flex this degree to your parents can flex this degree to the other Asian aunties and uncles. So yeah, keep that in mind. And my ranking criteria is really based on job security, the career pathway, your earning potential, flexibility, and how much the degree actually carries you somewhere after graduation. Like, do you actually need a degree to do that? So, look, with that being said, let's just hop straight into it. And look, if you disagree with my ranking, that's fine. This is just my personal take. And yes, I did use ChatGPT to generate these icons. Don't kill me. The ranking is all me, though. So, I'm going to kick it off with what I'm currently studying myself, which is medicine. Now, I think the general kind of feel about this degree is pretty common. There's a very clear pathway. You begin med school, you graduate, and then you have the opportunity to pursue different specialties. Job security, it's going to be really, really hard to beat this. And I think in terms of the long-term return on investment, it is pretty good. Now, that being said, it's not perfect. It's a lot of training and it's a lot of money. And to be honest, I think burnout is a real struggle for people that are in med school. And yeah, you have to be able to see the future with the delayed income because in 5, 6, 7 years, however long your degree is, you're actually not going to be making that much money even after you graduate. It's going to take a lot of training. But that being said, I think medicine is still undoubtedly an S tier degree. You just pay for it with a lot of time and stress and your 20s if you don't manage it well. So I'm going to be putting that in the S tier for now. And maybe it's a bit biased because that's where I'm in. But yeah, don't kill me. Okay. The next degree that I want to talk about is engineering. And I think this is a really, really popular degree, right? Like, if I go to any event or function, at least one person is studying engineering. And I think it's a great degree. It's very practical. It's quite well respected. And I like it because it has so much flexibility across so many different industries. You can pick different streams, civil, mechanical, electrical, so on and so forth. And so you have that kind of option to be quite broad in your skill set. If you have an interest in things like math and systems and problem solving, I think this is a great degree. And if you're in high school watching this right now, thinking what might be a good idea, I think engineering is a really solid pick. There are some downsides though, which from my experience of who I've spoken to, is that this is a really tough degree to get through, and it requires quite a lot of work. But look, if you have an interest leaning towards that side, you're going to be employable even in a difficult market, especially in countries like in Australia, New Zealand, where I'm from. This is also going to be a very, very solid. I'm going to put this as a very solid option for now. That might change. Yeah. Okay. Next up is nursing. Now, I know a lot of nurses, and at one point in my life, I was thinking if I should pursue this. I think nursing is great because it's really, really employable, and that automatically puts it above the playing field for a lot of degrees. Uh, Healthcare is always going to be in need, whether there's a recession or, God forbid, something horrible happens. Healthcare is always going to be in demand, and being a nurse really gives you that not flexibility, gives you that safety net of knowing that you're going to be employable at some point. It's very socially valuable. It's in demand, and I think the general kind of zeitgeist around nursing is slowly improving. People are realizing that, wow, our nurses are really, really important. So I think this is great, and I think people don't realize this, but you have a lot of career progression than you might think. So nursing isn't like, oh, you just become a nurse and that's it. That you're a nurse for the rest of your life. You can specialize, you can do more training, you can go into more study, and I think things like nurse practitioners are becoming increasingly popular, where the scope of your job is really getting broader, and you're being paid quite well, especially in a place like Australia. So I think it's great, but to be honest, it would be hard to say this without the downsides. Nursing is really emotionally and physically demanding, and if you ask any nurse, they can tell you that this is true. So, all in all, I think nursing is A tier. It's a really solid option, and I think in the future we're going to see, hopefully, because nurses have such strong unions, this be pushed up a little bit. But I think this is a really, really solid choice, and you're going to get a job, so why not? Okay, next up is pharmacy. Um, Pharmacy is a pretty interesting one because I didn't know anything about it in high school, but my roommate is actually a pharmacist, and a lot of my friends now that kind of I met on campus are in pharmacy, and I think pharmacy is a unique one. It's a decently respectable healthcare degree, and it has stable employment, and I think that's a really big factor that's going to tip it into a good spot. But the downside is your ceiling caps out pretty quickly. So when we kind of talked about nurses having the ability to specialize a bit more, and of course doctors as well, pharmacy doesn't. You can do it, but the opportunities are not nearly the same as the other two. So if you just want a job where you're in the healthcare setting, and um, you have some interest in like medicinal chemistry, pharmacology, things like that, I think this is a solid choice. Uh, it's kind of somewhere in between A and B, but I'm going to put it in the A tier for now, just because you are going to get a job. It's recession proof. It's in healthcare. Those are just, you really don't get much better in terms of safety than that. Okay, bit of change of pace because we've been in healthcare for so long. Teachers, teaching or education, whether it's primary or secondary, doesn't really matter. We'll kind of group that together. I think teaching is I know I've said this a lot, but I think teaching is also in a bit of a tricky spot. So the good things is that it has a really clear pathway, and the work is very socially meaningful, right? You make a real impact into the next generation that's coming up, and yeah, I'm sure we can all attest. Maybe there were some teachers in high school that really shaped, for better or for worse, how we view the world in one way or another, and the demand is there. Like we're always going to need more teachers, and although I don't think the pay quite reflects the workload, which is a downside we'll talk about in a second, I think that this is a very stable job. But yeah, as I was about to say, the downside is the workload is quite a lot for what it is, and burnout is a real issue as well, because I mean, understandably, you're working with, children that are growing and different, and that comes with so many difficulties. And I think it also depends on kind of which areas you work in and things like that. But look, all that aside, if you like to help people learn, you find meaning and purpose in building up the next generation, and you're not just thinking about the holidays that you get every term, I think teaching is great. I'm not going to say it depends on you because of the employability factor again. So I think this is a really solid option. Okay, moving on. Next degree is data science. Now, I'm going to be honest, every person I talk to in data science does not know what they're doing. Like, they can't tell me in one sentence what their job is. But that being said, I think that data science is super relevant in this day and age. Like, if you invest or anything, like everyone's talking about, oh, AI stocks, like invest in like data centers and processing and this and that. And I think having a really solid background understanding of that is super relevant in this day and age across all the booms in AI, analytics, tech, business, health data, et cetera, right? So it's a really flexible degree that puts you in a position where you're quite valuable in the future. But I think there are some serious downsides to this degree, data science, and all the similar ones, which is that job stability is really difficult. Because nowadays everyone and their uncle is going to uni, right? So because it's so saturated and so many people are graduating with this degree, it makes it really hard to find a job from what I've who I've spoken to and the research that I've done. So I think the degree title is not enough on its own, and you need to have strong interpersonal skills to be networking, to get work experience, coding, statistics, projects, etc. And that will really help you. So I'm going to put this in the B tier because it's relevant for the future, but it really depends on how much you're willing to work during your uni years. Like, if you chat GPT every assignment, yeah, I don't really see you being employed or even, yeah, getting anywhere with this degree, to be honest. So it does depend on you quite a lot. Okay, now let's talk about, every single Instagram reel jokes about this degree, and it's commerce and business. Now, look, sometimes the jokes do write themselves. When I was in high school, I thought studying business would make me a businessman and like a multi-billionaire. And then, I went down this rabbit hole and I realized that that's just not true. But that being said, it's a super broad and flexible degree that is still relevant. I mean, of course, it's still relevant. It can lead you into finance, to marketing, management, somewhat entrepreneurship, consulting. But the thing is, it's too general and it's too broad. And so, I mean, I'm just going to put this in the C tier for now. But the thing is, look, commerce can become anything, but that's the problem because you can also become nothing, right? Like, that's a real concern. So if you're currently studying commerce and business, hope you're enjoying learning 2+2 and stuff. But I think if you have a real plan, it can be useful because it's still applicable skills. But yeah, it's definitely risky. I wouldn't recommend it to someone who doesn't even know if they want to go to uni right now. Okay, biomedical science. I'm gonna be honest. I think this is a really, really risky degree. I don't know if I'm gonna put it in I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna put it in C tier because this is a really, really oversaturated degree as well. Like, and let me tell you, this degree is a lot of work. It's not like you're learning 2+2 like you are in business, but it's also not like you're, like really like it's not like studies your whole life. So you're in this awkward position. But the reason why I put it in risky is it's so hard to find a job. A lot of people that come into kind of biomed are thinking that they want to go into like research, lab work, or health science pathways, and that's good. But you kind of have to realize that these positions are super competitive. Like, if you just want to coast and think that you're going to get a job at the end of the day, that's probably not true. So look, there are some pros. It's academically strong. It's genuinely interesting if you're into like the sciences. But I think it's good to consider this as a stepping stone and not as the final destination because it can get a little bit shaky there. Okay, next up, design. This is like, it's like a little bit of art, like mixed in between. I think design is in a tricky spot as well with all these AI things going on. So it's useful for like, like UX, UI, graphic design, product design, branding, and digital media, all things that in our society are really taking off in terms of relevance. But again, like so much of the day-to-day tasks of this job are being replaced. I guess the saving grace is companies are always going to need people with innovation and creativity and the ability to think outside the box. But I think the degree in terms of the ROI is very poor because you can showcase these skills without the degree. Like if I'm a business and I need, and I want someone to kind of help me create some ads or, this and that, and I'm looking at two applicants. If someone is able to show me a portfolio of previous work that they've done and they've done a really good job versus someone who's just got a degree and maybe some mediocre projects, I'm not really going to fuss too much about the fact that this person has a degree, if that makes sense. Someone once told me that you get paid for skills, and for this one, you really don't need to go to uni for a degree. So I'm gonna say that it's okay. You know what? I'm just gonna rename this to not worth it. Ish. I'm gonna put ish because of course like nothing's hard and fast, but you get what I'm trying to say. You can do this at home, is what I'm saying. Okay, next up, arts and humanities. Look, I love the humanities. Like that's kind of what I watch in my free time, and like like my YouTube videos like on things like that. And it's a really interesting one because it's good for writing, thinking, culture, language, politics, history, philosophy. I think these are all kind of fundamental parts that underpin the world that we live in. And it does a great job at building communication and critical thinking skills to some degree. But the downside is, as I'm sure you can imagine what I'm going to say, is the career pathway is too unclear. I think it's I think it's too broad just to do on its own. Maybe as a conjoint with like law or something, you can get more value out of it. But I think that the arts and humanities it's not worth it. Like if it's out of interest, the internet has so many things that are available to us. I think it's tricky. If I could, I put it in the middle here, but I don't think it's worth it. Okay, political science. Where are we? Political science. Okay, political science is it's good for politics obviously, but also like policy, government, international relations, advocacy. And to be honest, with the geopolitical state at kind of which we're in right now, I think that people that have these skills are very valuable. Um, Going to uni to study this gives you an insight into research, writing, being like how to structure public speaking, arguments, public policy thinking. And I think these are really important world skills that AI won't be replacing anytime soon. But, surprisingly, or maybe unsurprisingly, these pathways are super competitive, like really, 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 really competitive. Like my fiance was at an interview for like this future leaders program. It's like a government role, and like people are like flying interstate to interview for these positions. Like this is like really, really, it's like the Hunger Games to like get a solid job. And so look, the downsides is it can be really competitive, but also really indirect. And I feel like your internships matter quite a lot when it comes to this degree. So look, it sounds powerful, and it is when deployed correctly, but you need connections or some other practical skills. So I'm gonna put that in the C tier. I wouldn't say it's not worth it. I think it's worthwhile to study. It's kind of hard to kind of float your own boat without getting massive bias from the internet. Okay, let's pick the pace up a little bit because I don't want this video to be like 5 billion hours long. So cool. Film and screen production. Look, I'm gonna make this quick. I don't think this is worth it. If you're really passionate about filmmaking, and like screen production, things like that, the whole industry is about your portfolio and your connections and your experiences. It's kind of similar to what I said about political. This one here, right? It's like you need to show that you have skills, and that's all that matters, not your degree. So look, if you want to go to film school, unless it's free, I really wouldn't say it's a worthwhile investment. ROI wise, I feel like you're shooting yourself in the foot. Like invest that time and invest that money into building your portfolio. And if you have a real passion for it, definitely pursue it. I think there's still value in doing that. Okay, next up, architecture. Now, architecture has been a bit of an interesting one. I met a few people, but I didn't know that you're not an architect after 4 years. Like, you got to do your masters. But all that being said, look, it's like you can kind of use your creativity side of your brain if you're into that, and you have a lot of kind of overlapping skills that you can have, like design and things like that. So it's good for you if you're interested in like details, long projects, and kind of things like that. But look, the truth of this degree is it's expensive. It has really long training. The workload is surprisingly more than you might think, and your pay is not going to match the effort for a long time. Like if you're like a super senior architect who's been in the business for like 50 years and you bought a house for $20, back in the freaking, I don't know, the 1800s, for you, you're probably living life well. But nowadays it's a bit tricky. And so I think it can sound really fun and, oh, I like, drawing and buildings and, like design. I think you should consider the reality a little bit more, but I wouldn't say this is risky without a real plan, but I would say that it depends on you. If you're proactive in your degree and you're making connections and you're putting yourself out there, I think you can put yourself in a good spot. Okay, next up, marketing. Marketing is a Sorry, I'm just trying to make up my mind. This is all coming off the dome. I'm going to say marketing is probably C tier. You are really going to struggle to find a clear-cut career path for you right off the bat. Now, it's really useful for like businesses, for content, sales, brands, social media, startups, and like that whole kind of area. And it's super powerful if you can pair it with other things, right? Like being creative, understanding analytics, knowing how to copyright. Those skills, if you can use them in tandem and you go into the degree with the mindset that I'm going to build these skills, I think that's going to be real helpful. That can put you in a good spot. But it's B tier because similar to, UX and design and things like that, your proof is going to be paper in this field, right? You're going to have to show for it. Physiotherapy. Okay, now my brother's a physio and I hear from him quite a bit. I'm just going to say it's a solid option from the get-go. Like, you're going to get a job. Look, you might not be paid $1 million, but in this day and age, the fact that you're guaranteed a job is pretty big. But and if you have an interest in like sports science and like anatomy, helping people recover, it's a great one, and you get a lot of patient-to-patient interaction, quite a lot actually. So that's helpful. But look, it's a really physical job actually, surprisingly. And I think the biggest thing that people don't expect is you hit your income ceiling really soon. Like, your progression in your career caps out quite early. Now, the good thing is you have the ability to like own your own clinic and broaden your horizons a little bit and this and that, and so there's that going for it. So it's a solid option. I mean, I guess there's definite ROI, but I can't put it in the S tier because the level of specialization and branching out and career progression you can get in medicine is really not even close to physio. Like it's a completely different ball game. So I'm putting that in the A tier. Okay. Look, I might actually not even get to all these because I don't know how long I've been recording, but I don't want this to be super long. Anyway, okay. Sports science. Sports science is risky. It's look, it sounds fun and it sounds like, oh, I'm so like into the gym and I watch Jeff Nippert and I know all the science-based lifting techniques and stuff. But the thing is, your ability to be employed or your employability is actually a lot poorer than most people think. It's interesting if you like sport and physiology and performance and things like that. And you do have some job prospects of leading to coaching and exercise science, rehab adjacent roles. But I think ultimately this should be a stepping stone similar to like biomed, because on its own it's a bit tricky and a lot of the practice that you can do is limited. particularly compared to a role like a physio. Like if you're going for exercise science, I would really say, try to buckle up and put in some hard yards to push yourself into the physio territory, because it's not as easy, and it's probably going to be a little bit more stress inducing in the future for you trying to build a good solid career out of it. Okay, I'm just going to finish this a little bit early with law. I'm going to be honest, I think law is overrated, and it's not because I'm a med student and med students think law students are like this and that and vice versa. I genuinely just think that law is really overhyped. Like the employability has gone down the drain recently. Like there's so many law graduates and the market is so saturated, and a lot of the demand that's required is actually for people that are more senior in their career, not entry level graduates. And on top of that, I think a lot of the groundwork or the sort of stuff that you'd get the sort of low level people to do is pretty quickly going to be replaced by AI. It's a lot of like reading and like sifting through text, and to be honest, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't actually know what they do, but just like from who I've spoken to, I think this degree has lost the charm that it once had. Now, that being said, like, it doesn't seem fair that you're putting this under nursing, you're putting this under engineering. I think it is fair, because these ones here, if you graduate, you're guaranteed to get a job. Like you don't have to break your back to try to find an internship. You know what I mean? Okay, maybe like engineering, you got to lock in a little bit. But these ones here, if you just go with the flow, like you're gonna get employed. But if you ChatGPT every assignment for law and you don't make any effort outside of just getting through and graduating, I think that degree is a lot less useful than you might think. Now, am I being too harsh? I don't know. You can tell me in the comments if you're in law and you think I'm just, rambling. But anyway, okay. My go-to degree. Wow. If I could be 18 again. Wow, wow, wow. Look, if there was an S plus tier, this is where it's going, guys. I'm not even joking. Dentistry is the goat of goats. Like this is this is like if LeBron James and Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant had a son, it would be dentistry. Like this is the goated degree of all time ever, and I don't want to hear anything about it. Okay, I'll give some reasoning. So first off, employability is not even a question. You're being employed. But what I like a lot more is you put in a lot less training comparatively to a degree like medicine, but your lifestyle is much, much better, and your pay is okay. I like to say that it's 20% of the effort for 80% of the results of medicine. Like medicine, after you finish your long as, whether you're doing an MD or an MBCHB, you finish your long degree, and then you got, a couple years after being a junior doctor or a house officer, and then you got to do into more registered training and this and that. And look, before you make it in the big bucks to afford that Porsche 911 GT3 RS, which probably doesn't happen anyway, you're like 50. Whereas dentistry, look, once you're off the bat and you graduated and you've got a little bit of experience under your belt, I'm talking a few years, things can really pick up real quick, and it's a lot more flexible than people might think. And on top of that, you get the ability and the option to further specialize if you want. And I know we talked about nurses being able to do that, but the thing is with dentistry, there's actually a lot more subspecialties than you might think, and your ceiling in terms of your income is really high. Like you can push this really, really high. So look, dentistry is, and of course there's downsides. It's competitive. It's not easy. If you set the UCAT, I know exactly how you feel. Trust me. And the work can also be a little bit repetitive and mind-numbing. But all things considered, look, like if I had a son or a or anything in between, and obviously it's their life, but like if I could kind of push them or lead them in a direction where I think they would benefit quite well from, I would probably push them in this way. Look, guys, I'm not going to finish all these, to be honest. I don't want this video to be too long. So that's my tier list. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of those. I'm sure some of you do. But yeah, thanks for watching my first video. I don't even know if the mic is working right now, so I might have recorded everything for nothing. But let me know what you think. Please like it if you can, because I'm trying to grow this channel, and I'm going to be trying to post once a week for the next 90 days. So see you guys in the next video. Let me know what else you guys want to see.